mother for Sherry Gay Dagnogo.
Becoming a mother is the toughest job I've ever had. After spending weeks, almost months, in Sinai Grace Hospital, dealing with the impact of hyperemesis gravidarum, that's throwing up all day, morning, noon, and night. It's throwing up until you can't throw up anymore and then throwing up again. It's dry heaving and pulling all of the fluids and acids out of your stomach, even until my throat was stripped, the capillaries in my veins were bleeding. So much so that they had to do a procedure on me while I was pregnant. I remember the sweetest doctor, Dr. Charfus, so comforting and so loving. I had to have this procedure done because I couldn't stop throwing up. It was so bad that I would throw up and the muscles in my stomach would pull and tighten and retract. And Dr. Charfus would always try to encourage me. And I would get out of the hospital and I'd come right back to the hospital because of dehydration. And you can't be dehydrated and carry a child full term. I remember Nurse Judy came in my room one day and pulled the curtains and said, "Look, Sherry, you've been here for a while. You tried. Give up." And I thought for a moment, just a moment, it would be easier to give up. This was my first time being pregnant. I didn't know what my body was going through. And watching the news every day, that was the time when Jack Kevorkian was on the news and people were seeking to take their lives. And so for a glimpse of a moment, I thought, and then I thought to the strength that my mother had empowered me with. You see, out of all of the challenges in the relationship that me and my mother have had, the one thing that she gave me, if it wasn't riches, it was rich. It was my faith in God. A solid foundation to let me know that all sickness is not unto death. And so I held on to a glimmer of hope and faith and allowed medicine and science to do its work while God did his work. And so they told me about this procedure where I would have to allow them to have surgery on me without any anesthesia. And it was a serious surgery because if they missed while opening my jugular vein, me and the child would be gone. But I made the decision based on my faith to allow them to put a cover over my face and to turn my neck and to allow them to cut my neck. And thank God no scar remains. As they slid a PICC line in my jugular vein to make sure that they could sustain me while my body would be able to sustain my child. Now, I got a little beside myself. Once I got the PICC line, I started feeling better. You know how it is when you go and get that IV when you're not feeling good. All of a sudden, all of your electrolytes come in alignment. You start feeling well. You think you're invincible again. But that was the IV working through my jugular vein. After being in a hospital, scents bothered me. My nostrils still work in a similar fashion. I could smell a mile away if something's not right. And so being pregnant, me and my late sister Jelena, I think that was part of the throwing up and regurgitating that took place because of the smells that we could take in. And so I smelled my hair. And I wanted to wash my hair after 2 weeks of being in the hospital. And they said, whatever you do, don't let that PICC line come out. I went to the bathroom and drug my PICC line stand to the bathroom with me. I decided I would wash my hair in the sink. Only to start washing my hair, and when I came up and looked in the mirror, only to find the PICC line was out of my jugular vein. Now, I couldn't scream down the hall because, you know, I've been throwing up acid, I've been throwing up blood for so long that my voice was a bit more faint back then. During my pregnancy, that is, and during hyperemesis gravidarum. Finally, the nurses and all the medical attendants came to the room and made sure they settled me down, and they gave me a drug called compazine, which made things even worse because I started feeling like my tongue was expanding in my mouth and I couldn't breathe. And so they had to do the procedure all over again. And I said, this is rough. I can't handle this. But again, I relied on my faith. I was able to bring my son, Jordan, to full term May 15th, 1993. And this year, he turned 30. He was the cutest little boy you ever wanted to see. So sweet during the era of Bill Nye the Science Guy and Barney. Oh, he watched and he knew every video that there was that would come on TV. He would stay at home with my mother while she would do hair. And people thought he could actually read at 2 and 3 years old because he was an auditory learner. And so he learned to memorize books. And when people would come over, they would say, this boy can read? And we would joke with them for a moment and say, yeah, he can. Knowing all the while, if he turned the book upside down, he would still say the same words. It was just the pictures that he had allowed himself to memorize the words. So strong auditory learner. But baby, turn the corner and get to 3rd grade. His teacher would call from Flick's school and they say, Jordan is a very smart boy. He was up in class. He took over the class, in fact, and he started telling everybody about circumstantial evidence. Are you an attorney? And I said, no, I'm working to get my teaching certification. She was like, oh my, teacher from Brooklyn. She comes back the next time and she said, Jordan was telling the class about copyright infringement. I'm like, we got a little genius on our hand. Turn the corner, get to 5th grade and Flicks. This kid's not turning in no homework. He's not getting anything done. Miss Dagnogo, we need to meet with you. I come to the school. I've always been a very active parent. I sit across the room from Mr. Ostertag, for those who know about Flicks, and he says, Jordan is lazy. I said, lazy? My son, Jordan, is lazy. You need to allow Jordan to fail. Allow Jordan to fail? Now, I'm trying to get my teaching certification, and I have a philosophy about education that everybody needs to be educated. So surely my child can learn and he can be educated, and he's not lazy. And so I start searching, and then I take him to Wayne State trying to identify the problem. Why is my son working his book bag? Why is he not turning anything in? Why is he having all of these challenges? As smart as he is verbally, only for them to test him and say he reads at an 8th and 9th grade level. Okay, well, what's the problem? I start researching and researching and researching after all of these tests at Wayne State, only to find out Jordan had dysgraphia, the cousin to dyslexia. Dysgraphia is a situation whereas when you learn a foreign language, you're not exactly fluent in that language. You hesitate for a moment to process how you should pronounce the words, how you may enunciate, how you might put the sentence together in a foreign language. Whereas with Jordan, although he read at an 8th and 9th grade level, although we thought he knew how to read at 2 and 3 years old, at this point, he wasn't writing anything. He would have to look at the board. If he saw the, he would have to look at the T, write the T. Look at the H, write the H. Look at the E, write the E. And so on and so forth. At that point, it was baffling to me, like it's impossible for me to become a private failure and be a public success. I'm fighting for everybody else's child. I'm leaving my work at city council, now coming into the field of education, because I believe that this is the gateway and the pipeline to prison. If we don't get education right, we're sentencing our children to a life of incarceration. So surely the passion that I have in my heart for other people's children, I can't be facing these issues with my own child. As time would go on and helping Jordan with his work, oh yes, the day he finally graduated, I felt like I had graduated myself after buying graphing paper to make sure that his spatial recognition would come into alignment, because Jordan would write a sentence and there would be no spaces in between any of the words or any of the letters until we had those graphing papers that allowed him to put each letter in a box. And I said, this is really hard. I spent all of my time, even while married. I spent all of my time from work to church to school to Jordan's school, trying to make sure that Jordan got the strongest education. And then as he matriculated through school with all of the supports that were there, when he walked with his cap and gown, I felt like it was part of my cap and gown too. Then divorce comes, and those adolescent years of a young man finding himself, not knowing where to place the blame, not knowing who's truly at fault, not knowing if I can love you the way that you really want to be loved or deserve to be loved. Listen, I felt so deflated. As time would go on, this kid that once loved me so dearly and hugged me so tight that eventually pushed me away. It made me feel that I didn't matter. It hurt my heart. Having this role of being a parent, something that I knew all too well, although it wasn't through birth, it was through premonition. A story my mother didn't tell was when she was younger, she dreamed her mother's death. So much so that it happened exactly the way that she dreamt it. And then she had a vision that she would have a daughter to replace her mother. And she had me. My name was originally to be called Julia Pearl London. My mother changed my name after knowing the impact of what my grandmother had experienced and didn't want the name to become my fate. And so she changed my name to Sherry the day I was born. And I'm thankful. But during my time of coming along with my mother, I used to be in the singing group with her. I used to spend time with her and her friends with her. We used to talk about all of her business. She said I shared only a little bit of my business. But the relationship we had was more pressure of being a daughter and a mother. No matter how many times I tried to demonstrate the need for the love to be reciprocated both ways, and I know my mother loves me and there's no perfect mother, but relationships can become strained. And so what I learned from hearing my mother's story, that she didn't get the love and nurturing that she wanted as a young girl. And so some of that love and nurturing I didn't receive as a young girl. Now, I was put on a pedestal to say, Sherry can sing, Sherry can speak, Sherry can write. But there were some instances in which our relationships became strained. And it wasn't until I heard her story of having children, losing her child early on in age, losing her husband at a young age and having 3 children and having to move in with her husband's family for them to hide groceries in the freezer. Hide bread in the freezer. When I thought and reflected after she sat me and my sister down and talked about some of the struggles that she went through as a woman, I said, how dare I not love my mother in a way that removes and covers all doubt? Because truth be told, some of us don't realize how to reciprocate love because we weren't given the love that we need. Sometimes, if you're honest, it's uncomfortable to hug people. So sometimes you'll pet people and still truly hug and embrace them and say, I love you. I have family members and even closer family, first cousins that don't know how to say the word, I love you. Like somehow that makes you weak. And until we acknowledge that deficiency in our lives and where it stems from, we can't correct it. But I'm so grateful that me and my mother, after all she's been through, we've had the opportunity to correct any imperfection that there is because love conquers all. It doesn't matter where your mother comes from. It doesn't matter what her academic or education background is. And so being my mother's mother, I was proud to encourage her to get her GED. Being my mother's mother, I was proud to help her get her associates from Wayne County Community College at the age of 75 years old. Being my mother's mother, I was proud that she was enrolled in Mary Grove College pursuing her bachelor's degree until they dissolved. My point is, it doesn't matter how fractured your relationships are. Get it right if they have life left in their bodies because you don't get a second chance. I have to say, there were times when my sister Jelena, who passed from COVID in 2020, their relationship was a bit fractured, and my mother often wondered, did my sister forgive her? And my niece Janita and nephew Julian is over here, and they know that my sister did ultimately forgive my mother. And I'm grateful that she did. I saw a Facebook post where a sister talked about losing her mother recently, and she hadn't yet forgiven her. Don't let that be you. I'm grateful that this year, since my son's adolescent years of not giving me the love that I've given him, somehow an epiphany happened. Somehow a light switch popped on. Somehow Jordan was calling and texting me trying to find out, what is it that you want for Mother's Day, when all I wanted from him was to ask me what I wanted for Mother's Day. I just wanted to be considered. I just wanted to be thought of. I just wanted to be loved. When we pour our heart and love in the reservoirs of life to people who are in our circle or in our immediate space, we don't want things. All we want is reciprocity and the love to return back from the reserves that it came from. When you give love, love comes back to you, even if it's taken away. And sometimes it's taken away. But before it's taken away, recognize the opportunity to get it right. Jordan bought me a beautiful pink robe for Mother's Day. That's all I wanted. When I told him what I wanted out of all the lists, and he sent me 2 robes. He sent me a pink one. He sent me a blue one. I said, is the blue one for you? He said, no. I know you wanted the pink one, but you must remember, Mother, it was a boy that made you a mother. Wear that blue for me. God bless you. I love you. That's my story.
Sherry Gay Dagnogo.